Norway, with its mountain peaks and majestic fjords, is one of the world's richest countries, and yet it is also one of only a handful of nations that continues commercial whaling in the 21st century. On April the 1st, Norway's whaling season will begin, and with it will come the slaughter of hundreds of minke whales off its beautiful coastline. In doing so, Norway will again defy a moratorium on commercial whaling imposed by the International Whaling Commission, the IWC, aimed at protecting dwindling stocks of the mammal. Norway, an IWC member, resumed whaling in 1993 under an objection to the moratorium. Now, every year, it announces a self-imposed quota, which for 2020 will be nearly 1,300 minke whales. What is alarming to the nation's critics is that despite a decline in the demand for whale meat from Norwegians, the government is determined that the practice of whale hunting should not only continue, but should be expanded. I had been due to fly to Norway to report on the new whaling season until the coronavirus pandemic forced all travel to be cancelled. However, two of my wildlife investigators were on the ground earlier this month on Andøya and the Lofoten Islands, so I still feel equipped to report on Norway's whaling program. Commercial whaling is around 1,000 years old. The Basques, the ethnic group spanning northwest Spain and southwest France, conducted the first commercial whaling around 1000 AD, hunting whales in the Bay of Biscay. Other countries, including England, Japan, and America, followed centuries later. At this point, the various whaling countries hunted sperm whales for two reasons. They had abundant amounts of whale oil, used for lamp oil and soap, and they were slower in the water than other species, and therefore easier to catch. However, it was Norway, a seafaring nation with its long coastline, which made the biggest leap forward in commercial whaling in the second half of the 19th century. Sven Foyn, a pioneering Norwegian whaler, launched the first steam-powered whaling ship in 1863. 5 years later, Foyn created the harpoon cannon, which meant the whalers no longer had to hurl harpoons at the mammals. These inventions also meant that Foyn and others who copied him could chase bigger and faster whales. Today, whales are hunted primarily for their meat. Each minke whale is up to 10 meters in length and can weigh up to 9 tons. Each whale caught is typically worth around $10,000 to the hunters. Norway, Japan, and Iceland are the main whaling nations. They claim hunting the mammals is sustainable and that modern weaponry, sophisticated exploding harpoons, mean the targeted whales rarely suffer. I asked Siri Martensen, a vet and the director of the anti-whaling group NOAA, whether Norway was justified in hunting whales and defying the IWC ban.
Commercial whaling in Norway could and should be halted immediately. There isn't really any economy to it. It's just a season-based occupation, so it wouldn't be any real economic damage from it to be halted immediately. And the reasons why it should be halted is, of course, mainly animal protection reasons, because being shot with a harpoon grenade is of course very painful, and also on ecologic reasons, because we really don't know how all kind of wild animals now would cope with climate change and pollution and all the other challenges that they are faced with. So we should definitely close down the whaling.
Anti-whaling campaigners are adamant that even with modern techniques, whales can and do still suffer pain and trauma when they're harpooned. In May 2010, for example, World Animal Protection, then called the World Society for the Protection of Animals, obtained footage that showed a minke whale being harpooned and wounded off the Lofoten Islands in northern Norway. After the whale was struck, the whaling ship pursued the injured whale for 22 minutes before the conservationists lost sight of both the whale and the vessel. Later, the whaling ship was filmed shooting a second harpoon into a whale, thought to be the same injured one from earlier, but this time making a clean kill. If it was indeed the same whale, it suffered from its wounds for more than 2 hours before dying. In another incident in the summer of 2006, some 80 tourists on board a whale-watching trawler off the Lofoten Islands were shocked to see a whaling ship harpoon and kill a whale directly in their view. The whalers say that there are an estimated 100,000 minke whales in Norwegian waters, and they are not endangered. They also insist that whaling is part of Norway's tradition. A spokesman for the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries said, "Norway's position on whaling is stable and reflects our approach to the harvest of living marine resources in general. The minke whales in Norway are harvested in a sustainable manner based on the best available scientific advice. The availability of whale products in Norway is wholly consumer-driven, and international trade in whale products is regulated by and according to relevant international framework." I have been fortunate over the decades as I have traveled the world to see scores of whales in their natural environment. I believe they are beautiful creatures and deserve our protection. I certainly think it is impossible for a country as wealthy as Norway to justify the mass slaughter of hundreds of minke whales every year, and I don't buy into their "it's part of our tradition" argument. Slavery used to be part of the British tradition until we realized that it was abhorrent for many reasons. So Britain abolished slavery in 1833, thereby freeing some 800,000 Africans from enforced servitude. Tradition, in terms of passing on good customs from one generation to another, should be championed. Tradition, if used as an excuse for perpetuating wrongdoing, should be deplored. Now is the time for Norway to recognize that commercial whaling is cruel, outdated, and unnecessary, and must be halted.